Young man, I wish to speak to you today about pornography.
Every day I see men who wish they hadn't slipped off the edge and made their wives cry.
This was not a good thing to be doing, but like addiction happens, it just little by little, and I couldn't stop.
I was attacked by Satan from the cradle, and I never got a chance to experience mortality without this cloud over me.
I was so far gone that I had no idea whether it was the spirit or the adversary.
It's just a preconception that Satan has placed in us since coming into this world kind of as teenagers, that like there's no way we could ever amount to anything.
Will you ever be rescued? Will you make it through your own survival story? The answer is yes.
This is a new weapon that Satan has been using.
Deception,
we're not talking
distraction,
about it.
discouragement.
I fight to watch men reaccess the power of God.
I am looking tonight.
It's not out there.
It's become far too normalized.
It's
for men, young and
I
old.
realize now that I am a warrior
who care enough about this battle between good and evil
against the adversary
to sign on and speak
if
up.
I turn my life around and be the person that they need.
We are at war. And for these next few minutes, I want to be a one-man recruiting station.
Welcome to the Eternal Warrior Podcast, helping young people in their quest for self-mastery, sharing stories from the battlefront in the war against Satan and pornography. Today we have a special guest. Joe is with us, and we're excited to hear about his story and how he's learned to help others on the battleground. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Garett, for having me. I'm excited to be on the show. It's a personal favorite of mine, so hopefully people will enjoy listening to this episode as well. I currently live in South Carolina. I'm from Utah. I do not here with my wife and go to law school. So that keeps me pretty busy most of the time, but it's fun. I love to read, sharp admission.
When you say read,
all the fun stuff.
When you say read, are you talking like fantasy, nonfiction? What kind of books do you like to read?
Honestly, I love going everywhere, but it's a little bit weird. But my favorite is kind of like classic literature. So the stuff that they make you read in English is like I love reading it and not having to like write a book report. I'm like, oh wow, that was just like fulfilling and nice. So that's kind of my favorite, but I like everything.
There you go. I know that for Halloween, I know this sounds weird, but for Halloween, I just bought my wife the compiled works of Edgar Allan Poe.
That's spooky.
It is spooky, and it was a cool leather bound book, and I was like, ooh,
yeah.
But yeah, we like to read some stuff. My wife is actually a literature major, so I guess she's not a literature major now. She was when she was in school. She graduated, but
she gets to own that. Yeah, that's forever.
That's a forever thing. That's right. Yeah. So you're going into law school. Is there a specific type of law you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure yet. I came in thinking I would maybe want to do criminal law, but from what I can tell so far, it's not my favorite class. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go back to the drawing board and keep thinking about it. Luckily, when you're a lawyer, you can do whatever you want pretty much. So as long as you have the law degree, you kind of learn anything from there. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I didn't know that. So it's not like a doctor where you kind of doctors have to specialize. Lawyers, that's not the case. You can, if you have the law degree, you can go wherever.
That's my impression. I'm not a lawyer, but I've heard multiple lawyers be like, oh yeah, like I was a tax attorney and I switched over to divorce because like I just was interested and like started learning about it. It's like kind of crazy to me that you could go that, it's not that broadly, but
that broadly. Yeah, that's
attorney.
Interesting. Yeah. Man, that gives you a lot of freedom. That's really cool, actually.
It's improv.
I mean, I got my degree in chemistry, and chemistry is a lot more like doctors, where you do have to specialize. So I actually have my master's degree in organic chemistry. So
the toughest one. Isn't that the hardest?
That's what a lot of.
I think OChem.
A lot of. It's not that OChem is the hardest. It's that it's the hardest one that everybody has to take.
Okay, I see. So there's tougher stuff.
Everyone has
everyone
to
has
take
to
it.
take
Yeah. Yeah. The hardest chemistry, in my opinion, is physical chemistry, which is very, very physics related, right? It's on the quantum level, so to speak. But most people don't ever have to take that class. So, but yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. So, you're in law school now. How much time do you have left in law school?
I just started, so I still have
there you go.
About 3 years, I guess 2 years and a couple months. And so
Is law
cut it down a little bit.
Is law
It's
school a
3 years
3-year
total.
program? Okay. Cool. All right. Well, how did you tell us a little bit about your journey with pornography? From the little bit from the beginning and how you grew into the place that you're in now.
It's a good question. I think I had my first encounter with pornography when I was probably 12 or something, a little bit. Okay. I don't know. I guess everyone's kind of around there. It seems like, at least from when I've listened to the show, some are earlier, some are later, but struggled with pornography and masturbation from that age pretty much until like just on my own. I struggled on my own, didn't tell anyone about it for years. When I was 14, came out and I talked to my parents about it. That was really hard to do. I'm the first boy in my family, so they hadn't really seen this. It was kind of like an eldest child sort of situation.
Right.
But, I did all the stuff, went to the bishop, talked to him, worked through things for a while. Still struggled for about 2 years. And then I had just this awesome period that I feel like sometimes I skip over in my life just because it felt so good. Like the years, they were too fast. They were just really nice. I had this long period of sobriety when I was about 16 until later on in my life. And it just was really nice to go through the latter half of high school age, I guess, without, having the issue as much.
What do you think led to that sobriety? What inspired that sobriety in you as a teenager? Because that's for a lot of people, the teenage years are the hardest for them.
Exactly. I still kind of marvel on it, honestly, because I am not totally sure what it was. I mean, again, I had spent several years kind of working on it. It was hard. Had to talk with my parents, like I said, which I know not everyone wants to talk to their parents about this. Highly encouraged doing so. But yeah, so that was helpful. Talking to my bishop was helpful. Something I noticed when I started this program, like when I started with life-changing services and met in Moroni, is that I was doing a lot of the things that MANPWR goals require. I was really consistent with scripture reading and journaling. I did both of those every day. I prayed every day. Obviously, church was a big part of my life. And then mission preparation, that was another huge thing. I think that, like, I tried to make mission preparation part of every day and every week. And I think that really helped me because I had something that I was, like, fighting for, And I didn't know it as that. I didn't see it as that at the time, but it was really helpful to really be working on that. So I think those are a few of the factors.
Out of curiosity, when would you say that you were addicted?
Kind of like compulsively, you mean?
Yeah, like definitely compulsively acting on it.
Definitely those first 4 years, but then later on, like that period of sobriety did end, and then I do feel like I've had periods where it has felt like I'm addicted again, compulsively, like doing or acting against my values in places and times that I just know I shouldn't. So it was a respite, but it wasn't forever. So before and after, I feel like was when I was addicted.
So I clearly don't know all people everywhere, but it is very common that in your teenage years, those tend to be a hard time. that's when people tend to rebel, and they tend to have to grow through a lot of that rebellion. But it sounds to me like you were the opposite, right? You actually pulled back. And I know you mentioned the faith that you had, but I'm curious if there's a characteristic that you feel you have that allowed you to do that as a teenager.
Yeah. Man, that's such a good question. I feel like there's a lot of things, and they're all cultivatable, I would say, like a lot of the things that I did as a teenager have helped me to remain active into adulthood, active in the church and, faithful, trying to do the things that are right, and obviously wanting to keep working on this issue. I think one of those characteristics that I have had and still have is just like this admiration for people who are doing amazing things. I try, I don't know, like obviously I deal with pride all the time. I think we all do, but I remember I just would see people and I wanted to be like them. So I think that was really helpful. That's kind of what sparked my desire to go on a mission, is I would see these amazing people in my ward to get back from missions, or my dad, or, my uncles, aunts, my older sister after she came home, just all these people. And it just seemed like such a cool thing. Now, I never talked to anyone about, like, I don't know, whether or not they struggled with pornography and masturbation, but I felt like those people were dealing with that. So I think that surrounding yourself with the right kind of people and admiring their characteristics really helps. Because I just started thinking that, because I think Satan tricks us into thinking it's normal, right? And that's usually, like, it certainly isn't the case, and it doesn't have to be the case, right? Surround yourself with people where it's not normal, where it's normal to succeed and do these amazing things. So I think that made me more likely to really just want to succeed and be like those people. Hopefully that answers it. I guess one other thing that I was thinking of is just spiritual gifts. I think that is super crucial to look at. I know, like, right around 16 is when I got my picture of a blessing, actually. And when I read it, it said I had the gifts of faith. And hopefully that's okay to share on a podcast. But I feel very
of course,
sharing that, because it was like a really big thing for me. I was like, that's like, I still am persistent. I'm still, I'm going to seminary. I'm doing all these things. Not everyone has that. And I totally recognize that. And I think it's totally valid. But even if you don't have a gift of faith, you have a gift of something else, something super cool. Like, just look into your spiritual gifts and then play to your strengths. We're here to strengthen our weaknesses, but we also just want to play to our strengths and be like, okay, like, how can I win this fight using my particular strengths? What God is. For sure.
You've mentioned that, as a teenager, you had, a fair amount more success than your average teenager might have. But you went on your mission. How did your mission go for you?
Yeah. I really do want to emphasize that this is not everyone's experience, but the mission was super stressful for me, which is, again, weird, because I just talked about mission prep for a while, right? I think I spent 2 years preparing, graduated seminary. I'd read my scriptures. I had read the Book of Mormon, like I knew where scriptures were and stuff. But I think I wasn't anticipating the stuff that I actually, probably needed to do to get prepared. I didn't get along super well with other people. I wasn't quite ready to, have a more restricted schedule. That's something about me, is I was homeschooled. So I really had a lot of flexibility to kind of do whatever I wanted in high school. Not whatever I wanted, but, it was more flexible for sure. I wasn't like in a classroom all the time. So, a mission with its scheduling and with its constraints with who you're with all the time, having to wear a specific outfit, all those things were just like, oh man, this is hard. I actually was like going through my journals today, like in preparation for this, because I was like trying to remember, all the different times in my life. And yeah, that was for sure one of the hardest times of my life. It was really difficult despite preparation. And that's okay. Like, a mission is meant to be hard, and life is meant to be hard. And I'm so grateful for that experience. But I just also, it was kind of a hard time. It's a hard transition.
Right. Of course. So up until that point, you still hadn't been exposed to life-changing services. So I imagine you came back from your mission. How did you fall back into it?
So that's the thing too, is I was on my mission and I actually did struggle on my mission. For the second half of my mission, it was an up and down battle, with pornography and masturbation. And there was so much resistance is what I noticed. That's how I fell back in, is it was just like, I think in the program we talked about the beach ball, and I never thought of it this way because I really didn't analyze or think about my struggles with MNP, but it was just like me trying to hold a beach ball down under. And I was going through all this stress with the mission. I was going through constant change, a lot of fear. Wasn't the best with people, but that's all you do. And so I was just trying to restrain this beach ball. I was like, it doesn't exist, like I've never struggled. Like, I'm fine. I've repented. And it just kept coming up out of the surf, It was like, okay, here you go. Something with that is, I think it was really helpful to always be open with priesthood leaders. I've made a commitment to myself, and I recommend that all listeners do the same. With our priesthood leaders, we're just honest. So I always talk to my mission president about my struggles, and the only thing I wish I had done better is to actually try and take care of it. I thought that just by confessing, I was good, and that's not the case. There's a lot of resources, and that's something else as well, Gary, is that every time I was offered resources, I would turn them down because I thought I was stronger. Like, I didn't need those resources. My parents offered to find programs for me, or use a mission therapist or something. But I kept being like, no, I've got this. I can handle it on my own. And I couldn't. Like, you really just can't. So it's worth getting some help, is what I learned. Sorry, you were going to ask.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I was just going to say that what you pointed out there is really interesting. It's not part of the Men of Moroni or the even life-changing services per se, but part of the addiction recovery program. Right, the 12-step program. The first step in that addiction recovery is admitting that you are powerless to overcome this on your own. And it sounds to me like that was something you struggled with on your mission, was recognizing that, hey, I can't do this by myself.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people in this situation, it just feels like, first of all, you have to keep it secret, and then second of all, it's like a simple thing. You can just do it on your own, but it's not the case. As you and I both know, like, you got to do some things. You got to have some people. You got to have a support system. Shocking, I know, but
right. Yeah. So after experiencing that, at what point do you think you actually did recognize that I can't do this by myself?
Honestly, since then, Garrett, it's kind of like it just been a battle. Like, I wouldn't say every day, because it's totally different, as you get older, like, maturity changes, a lot of things kind of adjust. So I'm 25 now. I got back from my mission 2020. I think I had about a year after my mission that was pretty good. Part of that success came from me not actually using a smartphone for a year, which was crazy. Even back in 2020, like, not very many people have done that, honestly. But, I just kind of like used the dumb phone, and that's helpful, but obviously, like, it doesn't, you've got to learn the techniques so that you can overcome, not just by not having access to technology. So I thought that was a simple solution, but since then, like, I continued to struggle. I think the biggest wake-up call is just that I kept having relapses. Like, I'd have months of sobriety and then relapses for a while. And I just got so sick of that when it happened after I got married. Like, that's when it just snapped me awake. It's like, okay, clearly there's more going on here, and I need to do something, because all of a sudden I was hurting more than just myself. And I always thought that, the problem would go away after I got married, right? And
right. What we all mistakenly assume.
Yeah, what we all assume is that, you know, it's just, we're all good. No, like MNP are fulfilling a need for us, right? And so we have to find a way to actually address the root of the problem. So that was a huge reason that I saw the program. Someone from the program, Talon Loosely, actually came and spoke to our ward. He wasn't trying to like get recruits or anything, but I just had an amazing bishop who realized it was a problem, and so we brought it into our, you know, young married student ward, and Dallin came and spoke to us, and I was like, okay, there's my sign. I need to reach out to someone. I've turned it down for so long now. It's time that I'm in the work with the program. And, you know, there was ups and downs even after that, but it's been amazing. And I feel like I've, like, even just looking back at the past, all of a sudden I'm realizing I know more than I thought I did back then. And the other thing is I realize that there's still more to learn, you know, like the battle isn't over until I'm dead, and that's okay. Like I can keep fighting, and yeah. So I guess that's where I'm at, you know, is like still learning the techniques that I need to, but experiencing more sobriety and being more open. Usually I don't feel as overconfident as I would in the past, where it was like, I'm doing so great. And then the next day is when I have my relapse. It's like, I'm doing so great.
Right.
Oh, that's a red flag to me that I'm thinking that, you know, like it's time to probably do something about that. Let's reach out to the group and, you know, get some advice for where I'm at.
So that's an interesting case that you bring up, because I certainly have felt the same thing. As soon as I begin to feel like I'm doing fantastic, it usually means within 24 hours, I'm going to mess up.
Yeah.
Right.
With 24-hour rule. Yeah.
So why do you think that is?
It's a good question. I think it kind of goes back to pride, right? At least in my case, like I probably a very prideful person. And I don't say that to like identify myself and, you know, be like, oh, like I can never change that. Like, yeah, I can probably change that. I can fix that. But I'll just get this pride and all of a sudden be thinking that I'm better than I am and that I'm doing better than I actually am. And Satan uses all sorts of different tools. But yeah, it sounds like he's used that tool on you and me both, and probably for a few of the listeners. Like, you know, he kind of goes in a circle because he knows that the circle works, keeps us in our loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you noticed, let me rephrase that. In addressing temptations like this, urges, or even just limiting beliefs like this, how do you work through them? What's your personal process?
That's a really good question. I will say, I think relay is really helpful for this.
For our listeners, will you just give us a quick explanation of what relay is?
For sure. Relay is an app that you can use to like be in touch with a group. It's also a way that you can track your goals. Got helpful tips. It's got lessons. It's got resources. I feel like it's really nice too because it's an app, and so many of my battles have been on technology or on my phone, you know, and this is a way for me to fight back that's on my phone. So I feel like when I'm feeling some type of way or feeling prideful, I like to open up my app, kind of see what I haven't gotten done that day, you know, because I'll have my goals. I try to keep them pretty simple so that I can get them done in a day. I find that usually I get them done at the end of the day. So if I'm feeling really good, it's like, okay, have I gotten my goals done today? I feel like something that is good is I haven't, you know, compared myself as much recently, which is helpful. I think a lot of times I would compare myself to others, and then, you know, that will give me an inflated sense of my success, or it would give me deflated sense of stress and worry, and I'm not measuring up to other people. So either way, it was working in Satan's favor. So comparison isn't really the way to do that. But comparison to your past self is probably a helpful way to look at it. Like, okay, like have I learned these lessons in comparison to what you want to be in the future? Am I living the way I want to live in 10 or 15 years? Do I want to increase in power, or do I just want to be satisfied with where I'm at?
That kind of sounds like you're defining your why, right? Like each day you're working on defining what your why is for the next day. Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right. Defining my why, that's another thing that Relay has, is just, it's got like this pulse check feature, and I have that as one of my goals. I do a pulse check every day. I for sure can do a better job at this. I don't write down my why explicitly, but it's helpful to remember that, And usually when I'm doing that, I try to like assess my mental state, see where I'm at. I'm feeling good. Why am I feeling good? Feeling bad? Try to get to the root of that and see like what feeling I'm actually experiencing. Kind of like the levels on the chemical scale. I'll try to see where I'm at on that. And it's okay to be honest, like even when you're far into recovery, if you're at a level 3 or a 4, it's time to acknowledge that and to be honest and to reach out to someone about that. So again, I'm not the best at this, but humility, I think, is a big thing here.
Right. No, I agree. I think some of the time we forget to take that humility, and it leads us into traps of Satan's, right? We forget to say, what, I'm not perfect and I'm not doing well right now. Even if we've been doing well for a month, 2 months, however long, but recognizing, hey, things have been slipping downward and I need to get back up.
Yeah, for sure.
So you went through the Men of Moroni program, yes?
Yes, I did.
And it sounds to me like that was a fairly positive experience for you.
Yeah, I would say that it was awesome. It's really, honestly, been one of the best times of my life, like the best things. I can say that.
And how long ago did you start the Men of Moroni program?
I think it was about a year ago, which crazy. So yeah, not super long. Again, like I'm still going through recovery and stuff, but yeah, I started in September, I think, of 2023.
And are you still in the program, or have you vested? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I invested in the program in a Sunday night group, so I go to that. And then I still stay involved with the program too, like as a personal warrior trainer. So I think that's really an awesome thing. Like I work for the program now. I've heard that's helpful, for lots of people with different kinds of addictions, next step is to start helping people. And that keeps you on your toes as well.
So as a personal warrior trainer, we have interviewed in the past on our podcast a few personal warrior trainers. What would you say as a personal warrior trainer is some of the best tools that you've been able to teach others about?
Yeah. I think the most important tool, and it's kind of a broad tool here, but it's for sure the MANPWR. And I know there's like the girl power goals as well. Although, I've only worked with other guys in the program. So that's my thing, right? Is MANPWR.
Right.
But those tools are really essential. They give you the confidence that you need to succeed. They give you the spiritual strength. So I think that those are the most important. Other potential or other tools that are also important are having a good group system, communicating with others, and like having that support system, both in the group and I would say out of the group is really helpful as well. I'm trying to think. I feel like those are the easiest to define tools. You know, there's lots of kind of more nebulous things that you could talk about, but if you're doing those and you're doing them with intention, it's going to work.
Now, you've mentioned MANPWR, and MANPWR can be found all over life-changing services, especially in the free book that they have, like Dragons Did They Fight? But I'm curious, as from the perspective of a personal warrior trainer, could you give us just like go through each letter of that acronym and give us what it is and then what you think is important about that goal? Does that make sense? Just like what is important from your perspective as somebody who helps others define those goals? What do you think is important about each one of those?
Love that question. I think that's a good way to think about it. Because yeah, each of the goals is separately important, but then yeah, collectively, I think we'll kind of see that as we talk about these. So the first is the M goal, right? That's the ministering goal. Ministry is crucial. Like the way that I learned it is that ministry is one of the best ways that we can strike back. So Satan doesn't have a body. We can't hit him with a sword or shoot him with a gun or anything like that, right? But there's one thing he hates.
That's too bad, isn't it?
It is too bad. Man, I wish I could just duel him. But, you know, that's his own punishment, is that he can't, you know, he doesn't have a body for a reason. So, sucks to suck, Satan. But we have this amazing opportunity to reach out to others and to minister. It's what Jesus Christ did, and I think it's the best way possible to strike back against Satan. So many people that I work with, they're doing good things every day. You know, a lot of my teenagers are serving their parents or siblings. A lot of the, I guess I'll say older guys, I'll join myself in there too, but they're serving their wives or their kids. You know, everyone's usually serving someone. If they're in the group, it's because they care about others. They're naturally just serving people. But the most important thing about ministering, and that was the question, right, is like the most important part of each of the goals?
Yeah, well, what you find from your perspective, what you believe to be the most important aspect of that ministering.
Okay, perfect. Because that's what I was going to say is intention is the most important thing, at least with ministering. Because you can't just like look at your goals and be like, oh, like, yeah, I grabbed a glass of water for my toddler. At the end of the night, you're like, okay, I checked that goal. I did it. It's like, that's awesome. I'm glad you did that. But did you do that with the intention to strike back against Satan and to win your manpower that day? Because that makes a huge difference. I don't know really why, but it does make a difference. So intention is absolutely required for ministry. I think for action, that one is just, well, action and accountability is what A stands for, right? Action is huge.
Right.
It just gives you a lot of like personal self-confidence is what I would say. My action goals are pretty simple, and most of the guys that I work with, we try to keep it simple, right? It's something that you can do without overwhelming yourself, because so often, you know, Satan will just hit us with this perfectionist trap. It's like, if I'm not in the gym for 3 hours, then can I really mark this goal? It's like, yeah, you just have to intentionally write out the goal. But to do something physical every day is awesome because we have bodies, Satan doesn't, and our bodies are meant to help with our mind, right? And all the lost battles that I've ever had, it starts up here, and usually it doesn't start the way that I think, which is when I get a temptation. Usually it starts way before that, when I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling worried, right? Feeling betrayed, whatever strong emotion, right? So I think that's crucial, is that we do it. Is that action gives us that benefit. Accountability, I'll say that the most important thing on that is just like being connected to others, being open with others. So often we feel like we're alone in this fight, but we're not. And when we have an accountability partner, when we're open with others, I mean, the more accountability partners you have, the better. Like, even if you're worried or afraid of ostracism or whatever, I just like the more people I've talked to about it, the better it's been, you know? One of the coolest experiences that I've had with accountability, for sure, was going through the program. I felt prompted to talk to one of my little brothers about like going through battles, right? And we had an amazing discussion about it. And I thought he was perfect. I'll tell you that much. And I mean, I just have so much more respect for him after learning what he was doing to fight his battles, you know? And I just think that it's helpful to talk to other people, right? So just bring other people into it. Accountability helps us do that.
I think if I recall correctly, when I started the Relay app, when I started using the Relay app, one of the first quotes they give you is that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So yeah, I think having as many accountability partners as you can have is good. Talk about it. Talk openly about it. Yeah,
you're totally right. You just mic drop right after that quote. Like, I'm glad you brought that up. Connection is huge.
Yep.
This is kind of off topic, but I remember I watched a podcast a little while ago. Fascinating, or sorry, not a podcast, a TED Talk. This guy, talks about like overcoming pornography in his life. He's not in like community services or anything like that, but I think he was at like a work meeting and he was talking with some other coworkers and they were like, "What's your biggest goal for this year?" And he was like, "All right, my goal is that I want to stop looking at pornography. And like, my goal is to stay sober with that." And like, I imagine that room was a little bit awkward, but just amazing that, you know, he had this experience and was able to talk to someone else who was not connected to the problem. I just think that the whole world would be a little bit better if, you know, we communicated more openly. Like, I wouldn't put a limit at all. I also just wouldn't put any sort of limit on how helpful it can be, because it grows and increases all the time. I think the next goal as well has a lot of really important factors. That's the no goal, if it's okay if I talk about that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry. I said no. I'm trying to transition because like the no/new, right? And I keep seeing sometimes there's a tendency to go too far to the no, and sometimes there's a tendency to go too far to the new. And that's not the expert opinion or anything. Like, that's just from me. But
right.
I've seen if people focus way too much on the no aspect, then they just kind of get hopeless sometimes with goals, because it's like, oh, if I didn't complete, like if I forgot and brought my phone into the bedroom or something, if that's a fairly common no goal. No worries if that's not yours or anything, but if I brought my phone in the bedroom, then like all is lost. Like, I'm not going to be perfect MANPWR, so I may as well not worry about my goals for the rest of the day. And I don't think that's, you know, I think that that's good to an extent, but like you kind of also have to make sure that your no goal is reasonable. I think it's more helpful to think of it as a new goal, because then you're not, you're thinking about doing something new, and it's easier to make that into a habit. So if we stick with that example of bringing the phone into the room, like if my new goal is instead of bringing the phone into the room, like there's a little table outside my room, and new goal is I take my phone out of my pocket, put it there. And then with that new goal, I would probably just drill that, you know, like 5 or 10 times when I first come up with it, and then drill it every day. And I've kind of made I've recommended that you have a drill as your new goal, right? So if you do that goal times in the day, I'd say that's accomplishing your new goal. So like I go into my room as if I'm about to forget, and I remember, take it out, and I just drill that 5 times. Yeah, it might look a little bit stupid, but is it really stupid as your recovery?
Right.
Absolutely not. Like, that's helpful. That's amazing. The other thing too is with that goal, it's got to be centered around lost battles and preventing them. Because if it's just like something good that you want to do, that's great, but it's not helping you the way that the program is supposed to, right? So some people will be like,
Right.
oh, like, this is a total example, but I won't go outside after 10 p.m. It's like, oh, okay, like, I guess that is cool. I don't know what's going on at 10 p.m., but like, is that really helping you to not lose battles? So I don't know. Like, just make sure that, like, analyze your last several lost battles. Be like, okay, how did Satan beat me on this? And what if I just like change the facts of the situation, not even like my mental state, but just the facts? How would I have won? So that's what I think is helpful with that goal.
Okay, cool. So then let's go over the power goals.
Power, let's do it. Same question with those ones. The P goal, it's amazing, prayer. So yeah, it stands for prayer. I think it's still recommended in the program that you do like 2 prayers for 5 minutes a day, if possible. Obviously, all of the goals kind of subject to what you need to do and what you can do. So I think the most important part of that goal, though, is connection with God and also connection with yourself, oddly enough. But prayer is considered, I guess it's like the equivalent of meditation in other religions sometimes. And I just think that's very helpful to reflect on yourself and your relationship with God. So sometimes during my P goal, I'm totally silent and I'm just kind of like at the end of my prayers, oftentimes I just am not quite sure what else to say. And that's fine to just be present, be in the moment for a few minutes. So I just want to emphasize that. I don't know if everyone's doing that or if people feel pressured, but it's helpful to remember it's about connection with God and connection with yourself, and just to take that time and do that.
Yeah, I think that is a major point to hit when it comes to prayer. I just had a discussion with my wife about this yesterday. We were talking about the fact that prayer often gets treated like it's a vending machine, right? Like God's a vending machine, and we come to him with prayer, and then he spits out what he's willing to spit out. And that's not, that shouldn't really, that's not what prayer is meant to be. It's meant to be about connection. And I just discussed with her that sometimes my most effective prayers are like 5 words. It's like, Heavenly Father, please save me. And that and then I don't do anything. I just leave it right there. And I just sit on that, and reflect on my need for him and what that does is allows me to feel connected to God. And I think that's just as important as any string of words that I might have put together to form a traditional prayer, so to speak.
That speaks volumes to me. That actually really touched me when you said that. Because I feel like so often when I'm in a moment for a battle, whether it's a mood battle or, like a bigger battle, I just think that so often I'll just like turn to prayer, but I turn to prayer as like, the vending machine. I'm like, oh, Heavenly Father, please help me with this, this, and this. Oh, like, okay, maybe that's a pressure. Like, I'll go do this, go do that. I never just take time to reflect on what he's done for me, what he's willing to do for me, and keeping it simple. I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I've recently learned and understood more about prayer by recognizing that one of the biggest benefits of prayer is that we have the power to feel divine presence with us, right? Like, that's a huge deal, right? We don't recognize it. We don't think about it that way. We're like, oh, prayer is how I ask God for things. No, prayer is how you access his divine presence, right? And if you want that divine presence, all we have to do is ask, right? We ask for it, and then we don't say anything else. We just be there with his divine presence.
I feel like, that's highlighting just don't overcomplicate it. And that might be the case for all the goals, but especially with prayer, like just like there's a lot of good things about prayer. There's so many good things, but yeah, just make sure it's about that simple aspect, like you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then moving from prayer into writing.
Writing.
How do you feel about that one?
I love writing. I wouldn't say I'm like the best journaler, but I am consistent, and I give myself props for that. So many times. I don't need to say more than that, I guess, but I do love to journal. I've got journals from different times in my life. I don't love looking at them sometimes just because, like, wow, I really wrote cringily when I was a 14-year-old, but wow, did I really think I was going to marry that girl? Why did I write about this?
Yeah.
But
oh, that's funny.
It's amazing. Like, writing is so good. And I think it's so much more helpful too within the program, right? Because I used to always just write about my day and what happened in the day. And I haven't done that nearly as much during the program, but I have wrote about my feelings, and I have wrote about my why, and I have written letters to God, and I think that those are ultimately more helpful to me in the moment. Like sometimes it's good to have a record of your daily proceedings, and you should, and try to put that in there. But ultimately, we write because it's helpful for us. So I think that's the biggest thing there.
Yeah, I think one of the useful tools when it comes to writing, as you mentioned, writing a letter to God, but one of the things that really pulled me out of a dark place when I first started the program and I felt hopeless and alone was being encouraged to write to myself from the perspective of God. Write as though God is writing to me. And that really put into perspective that God loves me. Despite my flaws and my issues and my sins, despite all of that, God loves me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very powerful tool that we can use if we're just willing to, use our imagination a little bit.
For sure. There's probably so many, now that you're saying that, I'm thinking that there's probably just so many different ways that we can use that journaling tool, and just different ways that you can approach it to make it extra helpful to you. And I just think that's a really good example of how to make writing personal, and to make sure it's effective in this battle.
Right. All right. So our final one, it's our R, right?
Heck yeah.
How do you feel about reading?
Oh, I hate reading. I'm just kidding.
Well, I was like, you're in law school? I think you're in the wrong field there.
You were not expecting that one, were you? Yeah. No, I think reading is also crucial. I go by something that I read in the book, Like Dragons They Fight. In fact, part of my reading goal is reading Like Dragons They Fight. But the reason I do that is because in the book it talks about reading the words of someone who's smarter than you, or reading or listening. I do a lot of listening because pretty much the main time that I've got free is when I'm walking somewhere. So I try to spend a lot of time, listening to whether it's a helpful podcast that will help me in the fight, or conference talks, or scriptures. But I do think that it's okay to kind of count this goal as beyond scripture sometimes. Now, you should be in the scriptures every day. I think it's absolutely crucial. The prophets have spoken about how we need to be in the Book of Mormon every day. And if anyone listening to this does not know what the Book of Mormon is, or access to scripture, I don't know how common that is in the program, but talk to your group about that, because scripture is so helpful. And Book of Mormon is written for our day. It's for us. I just find that super helpful. The book also recommends 30 minutes a day, I think, if you're a Meta Moronari, 15 minutes a day if you're in Sons of Hyolan. You don't necessarily have to start at that, but the building up to it, is my philosophy. Is like, do what you can, make sure you're getting at least some in every day. My dad really helps me get into the habit of that, because he told me, like, if you just read a verse in the morning, and it could be, the shortest verse in the Book of Mormon, I think it's like Lehi dwelt in a tent. Like, I don't care. As long as you were in the Book of Mormon, like, you open the book, and there's something magic about doing those things and being consistent, I really believe that. I try to do more, obviously, but if all I get is a little bit done, that's where I start, then that's where I start, It's better than nothing. So I just really, I guess the most important thing, that was the question there. I don't know. I just feel like there's so many important things about reading. What would you say is the most important thing about reading?
I think you brought up a good point. Sometimes you might be overwhelmed looking at the reading and saying, well, I haven't read 30 minutes in the scriptures in a long time. And that's okay. You don't you don't have to start at reading 30 minutes in the scriptures. You can start with, reading one verse or a few verses, and then the rest of it can just be inspired text, right? It could be a general conference talk. It could be, like you said, it could be a podcast that's uplifting, right?
Something such as Warrior.
Yeah. It could be any number of these things, and that's okay. Now, obviously, we don't want to discourage anyone from reading the scriptures, because that is highly important and does provide each of us power beyond ourselves. But it takes practice to get to that point. It takes practice to be able to read scriptures for a long period of time and not get bored with them, especially in today's society and in the modern day world where we live in, where, attention spans are getting shorter. I can imagine after the first, and it came to pass, half the teenagers I know have already zoned out. So
no, you're right. And sometimes it's milk before meat, like still, the reading of scriptures, right? Like, make sure you're in them every day. But yeah, if you need John, by the way, and Hank Smith or something to kind of open this week's lesson for you, like, that's great. Like, I don't know. I just think that sometimes we let the perfect get in the way of the good. And whatever you're doing, like, do it and then increase it microscopically. Oh my gosh. I just mispronounced. In front of an organic chemist, you probably, that's embarrassing for sure. But
I'll forgive you.
Thank you.
I think it reminds me of a general conference talk from 15 years ago now, 10, 15 years ago, from President Oakes, titled Good, Better, Best. And in it, he talks about that idea of, just because one thing's not the best option you might take, it might still be a good option. So we shouldn't get obsessed with only doing the best or just not doing it at all, right? Sometimes it's okay to just choose the good option, right? Because that's what you can do right now. You can do the good now and work your way into the better and work your way into the best. But right now, do the good.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I almost just corrected you. I was like, oh no, I feel like that was like last conference. Time flies when which conference? 10, 15 years. You're right.
Yep. Yeah, no. Sometimes I think about, like, I realized this summer that I was going to have my 10th high school anniversary, and I was like, well, what in the world? Graduated from high school 10 years ago. That's weird.
Really crazy.
Yeah. So with your personal warrior trainer and having gone through the program, I'm curious, why are you fighting now?
For some reason, I forgot that this gets asked on the program. I love this question. also don't get asked by other people often enough. So ask your friends, why are they fighting? But I am fighting because I feel like my wife comes to mind first of all. Like I'm protecting her. I'm the gatekeeper of betrayal. I want to protect my wife and be with her forever. I'm also fighting just for all of the amazing things in my life. I get to work with the youth. I get to work like in my ward. I get to go to the temple. I get to go to school. All these amazing connections. When I struggled with pornography and masturbation, I don't feel connected with any of those things. I don't feel real. I feel like just a person, an imitator walking in the midst of reality. And when I am sober and when I'm working on myself and when I'm fighting, I feel real and I feel connected. I feel in the moment and I feel so much joy. So I'm fighting for reality, not fiction. And to feel that every day, even though sometimes it's hard, like there's nothing better than just living a life that's worthy. So yeah, I think those are my reasons for fighting. There's a lot, but the ones I'll say right now.
Well, can I just say thank you, one, for coming on and sharing your perspective, but also for that profound reason for fighting. I think recognizing that pornography is fiction, right? It is fiction, and dwelling in that fiction is not good, right? It's evil. And so recognizing that we need to be present in reality is an important thing. The other thing I would thank you for is thank you for being a help to others, right? It is so common for people to struggle with this and to work their way through it, and then they never think about it again, right? This is one of the reasons that it's almost awkward to talk about this in church meetings or amongst friends, right? Which is so weird because like 95% of all men have struggled with or will struggle with this at some point in their life. And yet we never talk about this. We never bring it up. We don't chat about it and discuss good strategies. And that's unfortunate. So thank you for turning around and helping others. That is awesome. And we always encourage that. Whether that's, yeah.
I think you're totally right, Garrett. And I forgot to mention this, but I wanted to hit on that as well, like you just said, because I think there's a lot of people that I have seen who have started the program and left, or vested and left the program. And what I hear usually is like, oh, like it didn't work for me, or it stopped working for me. And I'm like, okay, the thought that comes to mind is, did you work for the program as well? And the people that I admire and who've had the most success, the most lasting success, they're your mentors. They're the clinicians. They're the PWTs. When I realized that, I was like, okay, this is a lifestyle change, and it's for the better. Like I'm employed by Life Changing Services. Well, I guess I'm not an employee. I'm an independent contractor, but still, it's amazing. And something else like that I always wondered about is like the economics of it. And yeah, like you can get paid to work on yourself and to work with other people. I think it's the biggest blessing that ever could have come my way. Talk to your friends about the program. Like everyone needs this program, and so many people are hurting and hiding. So yeah, don't be afraid to share it, and do some sales basically on the program, and then stick with it, go through it. We could use more people who are in the program who are invested toward becoming personal warrior trainers or mentors, clinicians, whatever it is you want to be. whatever your ambition.
Or even just being the example. In my group for a long time. Yeah, for my group, there was a man in my Men of Moroni group who had been clean for 1,345 days, right?
Wow, yeah.
Like, but he still came every week, and he, if he could help it, he didn't miss, because he was there to not only be an example for others, but to make sure that he stayed on track with his own personal progress, and that's huge. Right?
Anyone who gets to that level of sobriety, yeah. Like, you just know that, like, usually you go back to your old ways if you don't change something major or drastic. And it's not a bad change. It's an amazing change. It's a good change. But
yeah,
I couldn't go off there. What were you saying?
No, you're good. I think my biggest goal, even as becoming the host of this podcast, was that so many people feel alone, especially in this addiction, and they don't need to feel that way, because they're not alone. There are so many of us who struggle, who have struggled, and they don't have to be alone. So that being said, I encourage to our listeners, if you have a story that you'd like to share, or know somebody with a story that you'd like to share, we encourage you to send us your questions, your concerns, your stories to podcast@lifechangingservices.org. And we look forward to hearing from you. Do you have any other thoughts? Do you have any other thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners before we go?
Yeah, I think just that it's worth it. And yeah, I'm really grateful for the program. I'm grateful for Jesus Christ, obviously. But not obvious if I don't say it right. Yes, this is all of my goals and stuff. They've been able to get me in contact with the Savior, and that's the most important thing. But I just encourage people to stick with it and don't believe Satan's lies. Like, you got this. I guess that's what I would leave people with. It's like, it's a sense of confidence in yourself, because there's a reason you're here. You've got this, even if you don't feel like it right now. Everything is working in your favor. You just stick with it.
Absolutely. So until next time, I promise to be of service to you and allow you to be of service to me until you and I both defeat this demon that assails us. Thank you.
If you're listening to this podcast, you have probably found that you are in need of, you are strongly desiring, a level of self-mastery that you have not been able to achieve on your own. Or you are a loved one or a parent who knows someone who would like to achieve that level of self-mastery. It's not fun to be in that situation. Been there, done that. I've become a specialist in this area by spending 30 years initially searching for and harvesting eternal principles found in the world of psychology, science, and the words of the prophets, many of them found in the Book of Mormon. For my own sake first, and then I found that they're of great value to others. Instead of just hoarding these concepts, we put them into a book form that is easy for you to access. Like Dragons Did They Fight? You'll understand the reason why it's called that when you start reading it. But go to likedragonsfree.com, get your own free copy of it, download it. And then when you're ready to talk over your circumstances and make a battle plan, call 877-HERO 877. In other words, 877-4376. Talk to our headquarters people, and if necessary, they'll arrange for you to have a consultation with me. I am sad that you're going through this, but I've watched thousands and thousands of young warriors gain the confidence and strength they need to be able to have the lives they want now and the futures they desire to have. We will see you soon.